Good evening, everybody. How are we going?
Hi.
How are we?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just
Maybe you're as well as
chillaxing.
possibly be expected.
Yes.
Yes.
Sadly. Yeah. I probably high on Oromorph right now.
Oh no. Oh dear. And is
And
there a lot
stuff,
of pain
but
with it?
there's been an awful lot of pain with it.
Oh,
To be honest, because it appears I broke it about a month or so ago.
but you didn't
But I
know
hadn't
you've been on it.
realised. Yeah.
Gosh.
And then because I fell off my bike about a month or so ago.
Yeah, I remember you saying
And
that.
yeah, yeah. And I just thought I'd sort of pulled things, twisted a bit of knee or whatever, sort of thing, nothing too horrendous and whatnot. And then last Thursday, I knelt on the couch to get my exercise mat, which I store behind the back of my sofa.
Hmm.
And I knelt on it to get my exercise mat out so I could do my training.
Mhm.
And if I did, the pain was just unbelievable.
Mm.
I literally, the shriek that came out of me, my
Oh,
husband came
dear.
running down the stairs. I
Mm.
had my head over the couch going, I think I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick. I've
Oh,
never felt pain like it.
oh no.
And stuff. So Friday I go to work, but I did struggle. And to the point where, because I work in the GP surgery and
Mm.
upstairs is where the little kitchenette is. So I take my food in with me and heat it up in the microwave or whatever upstairs. And I couldn't get up the stairs to it. So I ended up with a banana for my lunch because I couldn't
Oh
take the rest up
no.
and warm it up
No. That was
and
your sign
things.
that something was wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just too much. And the receptionists were calling patients for me. So because I couldn't go out and call them in
No.
and everything. So I came home on the Friday and whatnot. Was awake most of the night Saturday night because it was just throbbing.
Mm.
So in the end, I went on Saturday morning to the minor injury unit,
Yeah.
and they did an X-ray and told me I've been walking around on a broken leg.
Oh dear. Oh no.
So I've broken my fibula.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right,
it's
still
been a
pain.
bit of a
Yeah.
yeah. Well, they put me off sick for 2 weeks while I wait for the appointment for fracture clinics.
Hmm.
Although that appointment came through today, so I've got that appointment now
Great.
on Monday at fracture clinic
That's great. Yeah.
and things. And I spoke to Tristan and things. He wants to see the report and everything, so he can set me up then a
And a revised plan.
rehabilitation
Yeah.
program
Yeah. Yeah.
sort of thing or whatever with it.
Yeah. Oh
But
gosh, Hayley.
yeah,
You need to mind yourself.
yeah, I just can't believe, right? Because I was the one who, well, Amy, my coach, used to say I was resistant to the resistant training
Hmm.
and stuff because I just was like, yeah, not me, sort of thing. And now I'm getting that I can't do any of it.
Oh dear. Oh no. Well,
So,
Hayley, you'll be
but
back. You'll be back soon. But mind yourself in the
yeah,
meantime. Oh gosh.
yeah.
So
So,
tell me,
but
does
yeah,
anybody have
that's
any?
where I'm at.
Yeah. Oh, mind yourself, Hayley. Does
Thank you.
anybody have any news, any updates for us? Any progress report? Anyone new joining us for the first time this evening?
Yeah,
Oh gosh. Okay, we've loads of newbies. Hold on. So first person, Dorothy, how are you going? How are you doing?
fine, thanks. Yeah, just it was interested to join you this evening.
Excellent. Excellent. And tell us a little bit about your goals. What are you working on at the moment?
Um, I'm trying to lose weight and tone up, but get healthy, basically.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah.
My daughter's going to have a second baby
Ah,
next month, and I need to be fit to lift that
okay.
baby and carry it.
You're going to be on your feet.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's very exciting. But yeah, that's excellent. Well, great to meet you, Dorothy. That's fantastic. And Margaret? Is it Margaret?
Hello. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, there you are. How are you?
I'm grand, thanks. Yeah, so similar, as you know,
Mhm.
getting fit and healthy. Fortunately, I don't have children, so I haven't got any grandchildren.
Okay.
So my
Okay.
sister has kids, and that's where I'm getting my great grand nephews and nieces from. So
Very
yeah.
good. Yeah.
But no, it's that thing of, you know, I'm looking to retire and I don't want to be a shriveled old lady sat in a chair.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I want to be able to go out and do things and spend more time with my mum's moved back over to England. So,
Yeah. That's excellent.
you know, being able to
Yeah.
spend time with her and make the most of things.
That's lovely. Yeah. That's excellent. Fair play. Lovely stuff. Great to meet you, Margaret.
You too.
And anybody else new joining us? I don't think so. I'm just going through the list. I don't think so. Okay, I've found everyone. All right, excellent. So what we shall do is we'll go into this evening's topic. And I'm going to share my slide. And for anybody new, then we're going to go into the chat for this part of the mastermind. And then we're going to have a chat in the breakout rooms a little bit later on. So for this evening's topic, we are talking all things anxiety. Okay. And what I would like you to do to start off into the chat box, I want you to type in what springs to mind when you hear the term anxiety. Or if you were to describe anxiety to someone, if you had to define anxiety, what it means to you, what you visualize, anything like that. I want you to pop it into the chat. What comes to mind when you hear the term anxiety? So Deborah is saying feeling emotional, very good, yeah, and feeling out of control. Ooh, yes, excellent. It often feels like things are spiraling, doesn't it? And things are out of your grasp and you don't feel like you can get a hold on things, yeah. And then the emotion, so it does tend to be quite, it can be a very intense state if we're feeling really, really anxious. But even a small bit of anxiety, we tend to have that level of arousal, don't we? That level of intensity. So alongside the emotions can come alongside that. Yeah, absolutely. And Sharon is saying fearful. Ooh, very good. Yeah. So really that is what is at the heart of anxiety. It's a fear of the what ifs of what might happen, but more so to the point it's a fear of that thing might happen and I'm not going to be able to cope with it, or I'm not going to be able to deal with it. And that's the really scary part. So it's a lot of the what if this happens, what if that happens, what's going to happen then, what am I going to do, how am I going to cope with it? So there's a huge amount of fear. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Jen is saying it's stressful and you're worried about everything. Very good. Yeah. And if we're in that stressful state where we are very anxious, and it can be then that the anxiety can transfer onto different things. So we could be anxious about what's going on at work, or we might be anxious at something that's going on at home, or anxious about life in general. So it really can pass on to everything and anything, as Jen said there. And it can be very stressful, you know, particularly if we're in a state of anxiety over a period of time, you know, where we've got those high levels of anxiety fairly regularly, you know, that's really tough state to be in. So absolutely. Dorothy is saying a knot in my stomach. Excellent. Yeah. So now we're talking about the physical symptoms. So what does anxiety physically feel like? Yeah. So we know if we were to, you know, maybe get some bad news, or we're worried about something happening, and we can often feel it. We can feel it physically in our stomach. We can feel it in our tension, in our like all of our muscles. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. And Haley is saying feeling overwhelmed. Excellent. Yeah, unable to breathe and palpitations then as well. Yeah, absolutely. And you can see then really the stress and the pressure that we're putting our body under as well when we're feeling that tension. And that's where the unable to breathe is. It's a really extreme tension. Your muscles are so tight that your lungs are struggling to be able to get the space out, right, to be able to breathe. And that's where we get that, you know, very rapid breathing, because your body is desperate for the air, but it can't expand the lungs to actually get the air out. So that's why we get that kind of panicked feeling, or you can, you know, be struggling to catch your breath. Margaret is saying overwhelming pressure and worry. Excellent. Yeah. And that overwhelm part is very key, because that is where anxiety will show, is when we're in a situation that we don't feel we have the resources to deal with, or we're not going to be able to cope with it, or there's too much going on. And then it is that pressure. It's like, everything's coming in on top of you. Yeah, very good. And the worry as well. So when we're anxious, as I said, we can worry about anything and everything. As I said previously, worry is a good thing. It can be helpful, but not to the point that we are worrying for a lot of the day or most of the day. Then we're really in trouble at that point. Yeah. Mandy is saying a sick feeling in my stomach. Very good, yeah. And out of control emotion. So, I mean, we can see her already. It's not a pleasant place to be. Anxiety does not feel particularly pleasant. And again, oftentimes the sick feeling, the nausea, that can be multiple things. It can be the adrenaline, it can be the hormones that we're releasing in our body. Can also be tension. So if you're holding tension, if you can imagine, in your stomach muscles, in your abdomen, that puts pressure then on your stomach, and then we feel nauseous or we feel sick. And again, oftentimes we're not really aware that we're holding tension in certain places. And that's why we do, say, body scan exercises to be able to identify, am I holding tension anywhere? But particularly, the stomach and the gut is a place where people often, you see a lot of tension, and people often end up with, stomach issues that they can't find a medical reason to explain why they're feeling unwell or why they're feeling nauseous. And oftentimes it's because it's the anxiety, it's the tension there in the stomach. And we've got Ruth is saying panicking. Excellent. Yeah. So you can imagine, if we're in a calm state, we're thinking rationally, we're saying, okay, what are my options here? Where am I going? Whereas panicking, it's just everything is coming in on top of you. We're kind of imploding. And then from there, it's this we get kind of frantic, don't we? The overthinking. Excellent. Yeah. And the spiraling. And it's not only going to be bad, but it's going to be absolutely awful. And yeah, absolutely. And Carolyn is saying you can't switch off the worry. Very good. Yeah. Because if we're in a place where we're managing the worry, we are able to say, right, well, that's enough worry for today. Or do you know what? I've sat down and I've thought about this enough now. That's enough for now for today. But when we're in that anxious state, it's very hard to do that, because our brain keeps going, hold on now, there's a threat. And we need to give our attention to that threat. Yeah, excellent. And Linda is saying stressful feeling, the shallow breathing and a knot on my stomach. Very good. And it triggers migraines. Yeah, exactly. And migraines are still a little bit of a mystery from a science perspective, just in trying to work out all of the factors. It's probably a combination of factors rather than it being one factor or another. But certainly, again, tension, because if you think about as well all the muscles that you have in your face, so if you're somebody who like grinds your teeth, or you're frowning, or you're kind of worried, or again, that's all very bad. It all puts that tension then into our head, which can also then start to put pressure down around at the back of our neck, down around where your nervous system is. You can imagine everything's getting tense and tight and restrictive. And that's one of the theories around migraine, that it's a lot of tension, it's a lot of stress, and it's a lot of worry. And people do tend to notice that they have more migraines when they're stressed. Donna's saying nauseous. Yeah, very good. Again, probably down to the tension in the stomach, as well as I said, the hormones that we release when we're stressed. And Deborah's saying everything just gets on top of you and the slightest thing can tip you over. Oh, yeah, because you're really at the point where you just have too many plates in the air, and it's only going to take, a little bit of wind or something, jam, and everything has fallen. And it's just that slightest thing. So you really feel like you're on edge. Yeah, absolutely. And Amanda is saying things causing you stress, fear. Yeah, excellent. Or negative emotions. Yeah. So if you can imagine, when we're feeling particularly anxious about a situation, we don't tend to be full of joy, do we? We don't tend to be full of energy and full of optimism. And when we're anxious, we tend to be quite doom and gloom about things, don't we? And we tend to maybe have a low mood, or we could be angry. I mean, anger is a healthy emotion, but unhealthy levels of anger. Yeah, very good. Sharon is saying panic mode. Yeah, and nothing good ever comes from panic mode. And what we have to make a note of as well is that we all respond to stressful situations in different ways. Now, we tend to respond in one of three ways, which is the fight, flight, or freeze response, which you might have heard. So you might be somebody who kind of tends to get in there and go and madly try and figure it out. Or you might be somebody who tends to just seize up, gets overwhelmed, thinks that I won't do anything. There's no right or wrong. And a lot of the ways that we act, particularly if we're panicking or we're feeling very anxious, they're kind of innate in us. They're probably responses that we've learned for, over a long period of time. And they can be, we're probably always going to naturally respond initially in that way, but we can catch it and then we can, respond in a different way. So if we're somebody who tends to panic initially after hearing bad news, for example, and we might always have that slight tendency, particularly if we're stressed. Now, if we're not stressed, we'll be able to say, okay, that's not ideal, but let me figure out something. I'll sit down now in an hour and I'll work out a solution to that. Whereas if we're under a lot of pressure and then someone gives us bad news, then we're likely to go back to that old way. So, a lot of that is ways that we've learned to behave, and we can unlearn them. It takes time and it takes practice and it takes persistence. But we also have to, remind ourselves that we have to practice these things. So hiya, I'm new. Hello, how are you doing? Users, I've got iPhone. Is it Lena? Is that your name? I'm not sure what your name is, but post your name into the chat.
Yes,
Welcome.
yes, Lena. Yes.
Lena, excellent. Lena, so lovely to see you. Excellent.
I'm glad to be here.
So Sharon is saying you don't always realize it if you're in a constant state of battle. Absolutely. And it is, you can find yourself in that anxious state for years and years and years. Particularly if we don't have help, if we don't have access to coping mechanisms and things like that, and or if we don't realize that our anxiety is, wearing us down. And that's what it does. It wears us down mentally and physically, spiritually, emotionally, everythingly. But it is that battle state, Sharon. You're absolutely right. And if you can imagine, you're on guard. You're ready for the threat all the time, and that is not good for us. We're not designed as that for humans. I mean, our ancestors would have lived like that because they would have lived in very dangerous scenarios. But again, they didn't live very long. Now, for lots of different reasons, but the level of fear and anxiety that they would have experienced probably wasn't particularly healthy. Whereas we don't live in that society necessarily now. We have new threats that we perceive. So we have like the threat of judgment, for example. Judgment is a big part of anxiety as well. It's not always, but it can be a big part of it. Yeah. And Jen is saying it can lead to burnout if you're too anxious for too long. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. So after a period of time is where we start to really feel the effects of it. Because if you can imagine, if you're going through that fight or flight response, and the best way, is to describe it. Like, say if somebody gave you a fright, right? And you kind of go, oh, and you get that kind of shock, right, through your body. It's not a particularly nice feeling. But if we are getting that on a multiple times in a day, we're getting that experience, all that adrenaline, that hormone, stress hormone being released on the regular. It's not particularly good for us. So absolutely, as Jen said there, we can get very burnt out with it. Deborah said very tearful. Yeah, absolutely, because it's just all of the pressure. And a lot of the time, tearfulness can be sadness. It can also be things like frustration, for example. And it's really just feeling like I'm pushing so hard and I'm not getting anywhere here. And welcome, Lena. And Sheila is saying overwhelmed and not in control. Very good. And that is something as humans that we do seek. We endeavor to be in control. And it does tend to be very elusive. And it is that sense of I want to know what's going to happen. I want to know how this is going to turn out. I want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. When in reality, so much of life is uncertain. We live in a very grey world. And that's not particularly comforting to us as humans, and the way that our brain has been designed and has been developed. We're still creatures that like to know what's going to happen. We like to have that certainty, but we've got to learn to live with uncertainty. And that's the difficult part, because certainty and control are both very black and white, and that's not the world that we live in. But it's difficult. It's difficult to manage it. Probably there's a level of survival instinct on it, as well. Haley's saying hormonal as well. Yeah, very good. And again, because you're getting those pumping, your body is pumping the stress hormones out as a way of trying to help you to cope with it as well. And Donna is saying defensive and snappy. Very good. So oftentimes it's other people that might notice our anxiety, because it does come out in our behavior. And they might say, geez, what's wrong with you? You're very snappy today, or you're very moody today. And often
you do it.
not actually to do with mood, it's to do with anxiety. And when it's up at that high level. Haley's saying we're irrational. Yeah, very good. And we could be thinking about a situation, thinking about something that happened or something somebody did, and then we look back on it maybe 2 days later, and you're like, where was I off to with that? I was definitely overthinking that, or I don't know why I assumed the worst was going to happen. So you're absolutely right. It changes our perception. So our perception is how we see the world, the information we take in from the world. What do we see? Do we see the good? Do we see the bad? And when we're in that anxious state, as Haley was saying there, we focus in on there's a tiny bit of badness in there, but I'm going to focus in on that. And I'm telling you, that's going to mean something. And it's very hard for us to gain perspective. So that's why we have to use the tools and techniques to be able to manage our anxiety. We're never going to cure it. And it's not helpful for us to cure ourselves of our anxiety either. But it's our job to be able to manage it. Carolyn is saying teeth clenching. Yes, a sign of anxiety is building for me. And the neck gets so tight, I lose flexibility. Yeah, and particularly if you sleep then and you've got a tense neck, you can get like a creak in your neck, things like that. And again, that's the tension. And teeth clenching then as well. I think it can give you dental issues. Now you can get dental inserts and things like that, I think. But ideally, we want to reduce the anxiety. And it's just teeth clenching is something as well. It's really good to be able to start to recognize it during the day, because again, it's the tension. You're holding the tension there, and we need to be mindful when we notice, oh geez, I'm holding a lot of tension in my jaw. Get a lot of jaw pain, headaches as well. It's all centered around these muscles in our face, and if we're tensioning them, we're in trouble. Yeah. And Lena is saying, oh sorry, gone somewhere else. Upset. Yeah. You don't tend to be feeling particularly great. We're not thriving when we're feeling full of anxiety, are we? Yeah. And Deborah, I often used to think or feel nobody can help. So what's the point in talking about it? So I used to try and just pretend I was okay. Yeah. And again, we are designed as creatures for social support. That is a key part. But there's something strange in our wiring as humans that when we feel, whether we're feeling very low, we're feeling very anxious, oftentimes we go to isolate. Now, maybe that's something that we learn to do rather than it being kind of built into us. But it's very normal that as humans, when we're not feeling good, we isolate, and it's the worst thing that we can do for ourselves. We've got to be able to talk. I mean, Shakespeare used to say that long before there was things like counseling and psychotherapy. He would have said, just get it out. Just talk about whatever is happening. Nobody needs to give you, advice, or they don't need to tell you this, that, or that. Even just the process of you talking to somebody and somebody listening is very, very beneficial. So another really good point that Deborah's made there is recognizing our habits when we are feeling anxious. And are they habits that help us, or are they habits that probably feed more into the anxiety? Because there's so many benefits, as I said, when we talk to other people or we reach out for help or whoever it is that we're talking to. There's so many benefits that come alongside it, but little to no, if not damaging effects, if we keep it to ourselves. Lena is saying we could get a panic attack. Yeah, very good. And then oftentimes people can panic about their panic. What if I have a panic attack and I faint? Which you can't faint from a panic attack. So our mental and our physical are different different systems that work there. So there's no danger of you fainting from a panic attack. And Joanna is saying, oh, welcome, Joanna. Yeah, first time you've managed to attend live. That's excellent. And you're in and you're listening now. Lovely to have you with us, Joanna. And Sheila, you have to leave. Dinner is calling. Very good. And anxiety is something I've had to work at coping with over a number of years. And the GP, and excellent. Oh, they're brilliant to talk to. And your hubby as well. As I said, support. That's what the people in our lives are there for. And I can now see the future and sunshine. No more millstone around my neck. And I can see the light. That's fantastic, Sheila. Fair play to you. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the important thing. Now, if we've been anxious for a long time, we have to recognize it's something we're going to have to work really hard at, and we're going to have to practice and be persistent. But that's okay. But, you know, as I always say, the longer that something's been going on for us, the more we have to work at it, the more time we're going to have to invest in it and effort that we're going to have to put into it. But we can get there. And as I said, our goal is never to cure our anxiety, because that would not be particularly helpful. Because on to my next question into the chat box. Can you answer the question, why, as humans, did we develop anxiety? Any ideas? Why might we have developed anxiety as humans? What might be this? So as humans, all of the different things that we do and experiences that we have, they serve a purpose. They have a purpose. And anxiety has a purpose. And Carolyn is saying self-preservation. Very good. So we're back in the caveman days. And you're thinking, right, I need to go out and I need to, I don't know, hunt for some food. We had to be aware, number one, can't just stroll out of the cave, because who knows who's going to be out there. There could be someone from a neighboring tribe. There could be a saber-toothed tiger out there ready to eat me. So we developed anxiety. It essentially, you know, it's adapted over time. To some degree, we still have a long way to go to educate our anxiety. But certainly it does help us in to survive. So if I go into a jungle where I know that there's going to be tigers present and I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety, that's a good thing. My anxiety is telling me you would want to watch out for that tiger, because if we don't see it coming, we could be on this tiger's, you know, hit list. So we need to keep our eyes ready on listening. We need to be ready to go if we spot that tiger. So absolutely. Yeah. Sally is saying your environment when growing up, 100%. If you are somebody who has struggled with anxiety for most of their life, if you think back to your childhood, chances are there was one person, and perhaps more than one person, who was in the environment with you who was anxious. It could have been a parent, it could have been a sibling, it could have been someone who was looking after you, whether it was a neighbor or an aunt or an uncle. So absolutely, that's another big theory in anxiety, is that it's a learned experience. And the way that we would look at that, say, is if, for example, phobias. So I don't know if anybody has any phobias. They're very common. So they typically could be around. You could have a phobia for spiders. You could have a phobia for dogs. You could have a phobia for yeah, pretty much anything. They tend to be threatening objects. They tend to have a threat in some way, but we can develop all sorts of phobias. But the way that we know that a huge amount of anxiety is learned is that not everybody is going to have the same phobia. So some people are terrified of spiders, for example, and other people have no issues with them, have them as pets. They love them so much. And if it was 100% innate, built into us to feel anxious about spiders, we'd all feel anxious. But having said that, for spiders in particular, and snakes and things like that, there is an evolutionary benefit to it, because in a lot of countries, spiders and snakes are very dangerous. If you were bitten by one of them, you could be killed. So on some level, it makes sense. So the phobias tend to make sense. There tends to be a threat there. But again, we know that if you have a fear of spiders, chances are you came across somebody probably early on in your life who also had a fear of them, and they gave that to you. Well, they didn't give it to you, but you watched their response, and you watched them panic, and you watched them get anxious, and that's where we can develop it from. So Joanna is saying to ready ourselves for threat. Very good. So I'm walking down a dark alleyway and I hear footsteps behind me, and suddenly I start to feel my heart racing, and my thoughts are going, uh-oh, I think we're in danger here, right? That's anxiety doing its job. That's why we never want to cure it. We never want to get rid of it. That wouldn't be a good idea. So it absolutely readies us for there's a threat here and I need to do something about it. Yeah, very good. Amanda's saying the environment growing up, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Was it very, you know, could have been a scary environment. As I said, there could have been other people who were anxious in our environment. There's lots of different factors. Bullying, as a child is another big one. We don't quite, again, understand the link between the two things, but bullying does tend to be a big contributing factor as well. Then it's saying fight or flight. Very good. Yeah. And again, our anxiety and our fear states, right? They are separate, but they overlap significantly. And they often, you know, occur side by side. And Linda's saying a protective mechanism to make us stop going down the track that we're on. Excellent. Yeah, fantastic. So it is. It's an alarm system. It's a whoa, hold on a second now. We need to flag this here in this moment. And so we've got to be really thinking, what's going on here? And Ruth is saying to stop us doing things that would damage us, like not putting our hand in the fire. Very good. Yes. And again, if you can imagine when children, maybe, are trying to do something dangerous, and it's often, you know, people around them are anxious, don't do that, don't go do that. And that's a good thing, because then the child goes, whoa, okay, maybe I won't touch that. So that is a good transfer of anxiety. We don't put our hand in the fire. And Donna's saying the fight or flight mode. Very good. Yeah, so fight or flight is really designed, as I said, to help us to survive. And as I said, we all have a default. Some of us are flighters, some of us are fighters, some of us are freezers. And people can often feel a lot of shame about that, about how the way that they respond when they're really stressed. And that's not something to feel in any way bad about. It's something that, particularly as it happens initially, it's not something we have a lot of control over. It probably is a good amount of our fight or flight or freeze is probably innate. It's built into us. It's in our biology. Can we relearn it? Absolutely. But it is just something to note. Again, it's not helpful for us to feel bad or judge ourselves for our fight or flight or anything like that. And Jen is saying priming us for fight or flight or freeze. Very good. It's like, we're getting ready. Get ready, brain, because there could be a threat just around the corner. And then when the threat is here, bam, fight or flight. Yeah, very good. And Haley is saying bottling up and self-preservation. Very good. So one of the big behaviors that we see with anxiety is avoidance. And avoidance as a strategy makes sense because we temporarily feel better if we don't do the thing that's making us feel anxious. So let's say we want to sign up for a new hobby, for example, and we're thinking, oh, I really like to do that, but oh, geez, I wouldn't know anyone, and what if I went and it was awkward, and what if I really struggled with it, and then we decide, you know what, I'm just not going to go. And then we feel temporarily better because great, I didn't have to go and experience all of that awkwardness. And but unfortunately now all we've done is reinforce that anxiety. So the next time we go to try and take on a challenge, it's going to be even harder. Because we reinforce. So when we give in to our anxiety, we reinforce it. So our brain is going, oh, I don't feel good about that. Let's not do that. And then you're like, okay, let's not do that. Bam, you've now reinforced the connection between those two things. Whereas if your brain is saying, oh, no, I don't think we should do that. I'm saying, no, actually, I think this would be a good idea and we're going to do it. Then we're not reinforcing, right, that unhealthy connection. So it is very, very important. Yeah. And Sally is saying others around you, a situation that you've experienced which is traumatic. Very good. And the spider phobia. Yeah, excellent. Any other phobias that we have in the group, pop them into the chat. Anyone who's happy to share them. As I said, they tend to center around yeah, and animals tends to be, could be what else? Flying, swimming in the sea, lots of different things. And Lena is saying, or attack before they attack me. So getting on the defense. Yeah, I'll be ready. Yeah, very good. And again, if we think about how much of a preparation for threat that we go through and how exhausting that is, and then the threat doesn't even come to fruition. So Jen is saying, I wonder if the social anxiety comes from the fact that we couldn't really survive without being in a tribe back in history. So we as historical humans wouldn't have wanted to be pushed out. 100%, Jen. Yeah. And that's probably one of the strongest theories that we have about social anxiety. And that's why I'm always saying we have to normalize our anxiety. Now, we don't want it to the level that is causing us to stress. That's not helpful. But you're absolutely right that in terms of our brain and in terms of its understanding of threat, we've come a long way in terms of our abilities, but that sort of basic core stress response and response to threat hasn't really evolved. And absolutely, you know, like nowadays, you could survive as a lone wolf if you wanted to. If you wanted to go and live in the woods by yourself for the rest of your life, you could theoretically. You'll need help from other people, but you know, it's not impossible. I don't know how healthy it would be, but you absolutely could do it. Whereas, as Jen was saying, back, you know, historically speaking, you were as a part of a tribe, you couldn't have survived. So your brain would be saying, nah, you need to be accepted because you do not want to be rejected. Because if you were rejected from the tribe, it was over for you. Like from a survival perspective. So absolutely. So that is where we would say we understand social anxiety. It makes sense. Nowadays, it's not as threatening, but the threat now is more so about the judgment and the consequences and the meaning of that. So if I go to a party on Saturday night and everybody rejects me, nobody wants to talk to me, okay, I'm going to be able to continue on and function in my life. Now, I mightn't be particularly feeling great about it. But if I was to interpret that as, well, there's something wrong with me. And the reason that all of these people are rejecting me is because they don't like me or because there's something wrong with me, versus somebody else who will say, well, clearly this is not my crew. And these are not my people, and I'm going to leave this party. It's time for me to go. So two very different responses. But again, the anxious part is more the coping. None of us like to be rejected. None of us like to go to a party and be ignored. That's not an enjoyable experience. But if we can tolerate that discomfort and then make a decision based on what's going to be best for us, that's going to be better for us in the long run. It's much easier for me to go to a party knowing, well, if nobody talks to me, well, it's not a big deal. You know, if I'm not enjoying myself, I'll just leave. If these are not people who I can connect with, versus I need everybody to like me. Because if these people on Saturday don't like me, that says something about me. It doesn't. But if that's the way that we're thinking, then that really makes that anxiety so much bigger. But as I said, all of our behaviors on a evolutionary level, they have that function. There's a reason that we experience them, and absolutely survival is so important. Yeah. And Jen saying spiders, very good. Marv saying fear of heights, yeah. And Sashi, when I got COVID the first time, it took me months to get back out. Only would go out in the back garden. Yeah, 100%. And that was, I mean, anxiety levels went through the roof through COVID. And why? Because the messages were threat, 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 threat. It was very hard to avoid the messages of threat. And when we are faced with a threat, we feel anxiety. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. The two go together. Haley is saying, I'm spiders, but my dad is cotton wool. Very good. That's an interesting one. Yeah. And you can have it to various different objects. And Sashi's saying, I thought it was heights, but I conquered it by doing the charity skydive. Very good. And well done, Sally. And you're absolutely spot on. The way in which we conquer fear is to do the thing. And that's really, when we think about phobias are probably one of the easiest issues that we have from a mental health perspective. Easiest mental health problems is to treat. The treatment, the effectiveness rates for treatment are like really, really high. I don't know what percentage they are, but they're really high. But the reality is that most people don't want to do the treatment because they know, yeah, but I'm going to have to do the thing. I'm going to have to look at that spider in a box, or I'm going to have to, you know, touch the cotton wool or whatever it is. And that puts a lot of people off. But ultimately, that is the enemy of anxiety. The enemy of depression is action. It's doing the thing. That is what ultimately works to bring down our anxiety. Now, we need coping strategies to help us to do that. So if we are, let's say we have to make a stressful phone call to a friend, right? Let's say we have to give them some bad news, for example, and we're feeling really, really anxious and I really don't want to have to let her know what's going on and etc. But we can use our coping tools. So we talk about, say, for example, our relaxation, our deep breathing. We can also use our self-talk, you know, telling ourselves, this conversation is not going to be easy, but you're going to get through it and you need to do it and you need to do it now. So these are the coping skills that we use to help us. We're not going to get rid of the anxiety. Nobody goes, great, difficult phone call with my friend. Away I go. No one does that. It's normal to feel the anxiety, but we've got to do the thing. Lena's saying, if no one speaks to me, I'll just go and speak to them. Yeah, exactly. And that's such an important point there, because oftentimes when we do isolate and we say, oh, well, you know, people don't want to talk to me. And if they wanted to talk to me, they would. So we stand there and we don't talk to anybody. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when people don't realize, you know, that, oh, that person's not actually being, you know, giving us the cold shoulder. They just are waiting for us to interact with them. So you're absolutely right, Lena. That's exactly the response we want to take. Yeah, 100%. Okay, so you're all spot on. Very good. Now, I'm just conscious of time. We're going to run quickly forward because I want to go into the breakout rooms. As I said, a response to danger, right? The adrenaline is rushing through our bloodstream. So when you feel like I have to make that phone call, and then that fight or flight starts to kick in then afterwards as well. So we are thinking danger. We are thinking we are under threat here. Now, what we have to remind ourselves is that we often overestimate or exaggerate the actual threat and underestimate our ability to cope. So we could say, well, I'm in danger right now, or the worst possible scenario is going to happen. And as I said, I won't be able to cope with it. And that's the thing. And we're really betting against ourselves, and we're really downplaying our ability to cope with a certain situation. Okay, so those are what some of the thoughts are. And then the behaviors we engage in: avoiding people or places, not going out, going to certain places at certain times. We want to escape from a situation. We want to leave early, going to the feared situation, but using unhelpful coping behaviors to get you through. Alcohol would be an example there, where we find it really hard to go to, say, a social occasion without using alcohol, for example. So that would be an unhelpful behavior. Joe, you have to go. No problem. Good to see you, Joe. Okay, so we feel anxious from time to time. We need a certain amount of it to keep us alert and focused. We never want to cure our anxiety. For example, pre-exam nerves. Oh, I have that exam coming up. Oh, it is really helpful, because what does it do? It reminds us to study. It helps us to focus, right? But there's a sweet spot. There's a limit. And when we end up with too much anxiety, this is when it consumes everything. It's consuming our day to day. It's consuming our work. It's consuming our relationships. It's consuming our goals. It really takes over. And that is the point where we want to flag, hang on a second now, I need to be able to rein this back in. Okay, so what I'd like you to do, want you to discuss, have a brief discussion just for a couple of minutes about anxiety in the breakout rooms. First of all, I want you to think about the ways in which anxiety can get in our way. So in what ways can anxiety impact on our healthy lifestyle goals? So we have our goal there, and anxiety comes in the middle, thinking about the ways that it can impact us on that journey. And then I want you to give me 1 or 2 useful tools for managing our anxiety. What might be some useful tools or techniques that you use that can help you? Okay, so how anxiety can get in the way of our goals, and 1 or 2 key ways on how we can manage it. Okay, Joanna, you have to go. No problem at all. Good to see you. So I'm going to set up the rooms there now. And I'm going to create those rooms there, open the rooms, and away you go. Alrighty, fantastic.
I need to
So welcome back, everyone.
hang on. I need to just turn my microphone off because.
Oh yeah, that's all right. All good, Carolyn. Alrighty. So
I'm struggling to find it.
hold on. Do you want me to mute you?
Yeah, can you? Because I
can,
always struggle to find it quick.
It's all good.
Done.
Alrighty. So we shall go to room number 1. And we had, in room number 1, we had Amanda, we had Jen, we had Mandy, Sharon, Sheila, and we had Lena. How did you guys get on? Do you have a spokesperson?
Okay.
Go for it, Lena. Are you going?
No, I'm still here.
Still here?
Yeah, I'm still
Yeah,
here.
quite a lot of people weren't back in the room, and when you said that, so
Gotcha.
probably worth saying it again.
Okay, so room 1, Amanda,
Yeah.
Jen, Mandy, Sharon, Sheila, and Lena.
Yes.
Who is your spokesperson?
Jen.
Jen,
I don't know.
is she here?
God.
Jen, are you
Well,
here?
I don't
I'm
know.
here. I'm
She's
here.
back. She's
I
back.
don't know.
Okay, go for it, Jen.
All right. Well, okay. I hate being the spokesperson. And it's
This
funny,
is
we were just
good.
talking about that.
Exposure, Jen.
We were literally just talking about that too. Where's my video? Because we were talking about going to, how anxiety could affect TSD journey, and we're talking about going to a gym.
Yeah.
And we did kind of sidetrack into not physically being able to go to the gym and alternatives for doing it at home.
Mhm.
But so far as anxiety is, we're talking about exposure and how just if you might be afraid of it and might be really uncomfortable the first few times you go, but if you
Absolutely.
can just force yourself into it,
Yep.
the exposure, you'll eventually just be like, they're doing their thing, I'm doing my thing, no one cares, and
Yeah. Very good.
you just get over it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are right. It is that age-old saying of feel the fear and do it anyway. And I know that can be easier said than done, but that really is the only way that we are going to overcome that anxiety is doing the thing. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Well done, room one. Fantastic stuff. And room number two, we had Deborah, Donna, Haley, Linda, and Sati. How did you get on?
Okay, I've got 2 minutes now, Aoife. 'Cause
Go
it's
for it, Sati. You got 2
right.
minutes.
So, we had a really good discussion, but we didn't. So we started off with how can anxiety impact on our healthy lifestyle goals. So, I wrote down a few things. So, withdrawal from others, avoidance. So some of these, they might have been already mentioned earlier on, or by the
Yeah,
other group.
yeah,
Affects your health.
Yes.
And
Oh,
might get
good
more
one.
stressed or
Yes.
irritability, panic mode, overthinking, staying indoors and not going out in public. You feel like you're out of control, and it can be self-destructible. I grind my teeth. I've noticed I do that when I've got like one of those guards, and I think I can't remember, is it Donna? I think it's Donna mentioned that she goes one of her children had it or had it before, and the grinding, and they got Botox at the back and
Ah,
just to tighten the muscles up, and it stopped.
wow. That's
So I
very
found
interesting.
that's something that I'm going to look into. Right. So
Yeah.
how can we manage anxiety? Oh my God, I've got a minute. Right. So I wrote a few things down. Control the controllables.
Very
The
good.
massive thing that came out from when we were discussing was that reach out and ask for help and get support and talk. Don't keep it inside. So basically,
Absolutely.
otherwise you're going to blow up if you don't. Well, not physically blow up, but you're going to.
Yeah, but you will. It's just
Yeah.
that kind of imploding, isn't it? Or the
Yeah.
frustration all comes out. Pressure has to come out somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I've put face your fears, mindfulness and relaxation.
100%.
Obviously some
helpful.
things are going to work for some people and some things aren't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Breathing techniques, make sure you're eating right, eat
100%.
healthily and hydrate, and basically all of the TSD things like sleep, get
Yeah.
physical activity, exercise, walking, be positive to yourself, like positive self-talk, and be kind,
Brilliant.
get enough sleep. Maybe it's when you're anxious, you might be going 100 miles an hour, but try and slow down, do some reading, or some self love activities or hobbies, or meditate. I don't know, listen, I don't meditate, but some other people might. Right, listen to music,
Yeah.
dance, or visualize, visualize like a stop sign or something like that, or sometimes vitamins, or what you eating might help you with becoming less anxious. And I know that magnesium helps you sleep better,
Yeah.
and it might help with reducing stress and anxiety. I think that's everything. I don't know if I've missed anything off. Anybody?
Very good. And as you
Oh,
said
it's still
there,
8 o'clock. It's still 8 o'clock. I made it.
oh, we do have one more room to go, Sally.
Oh, sorry.
It's all good. You guys did a lot of chatting, so well done.
If I knew
Sorry.
you were going to be a spokesperson, Sadie, I would have just said limited mind to exposure.
Yeah,
And
but
then
the
you
thing
think,
is, right, me and
She shot herself
Debbie.
in the foot because she said, I've made some notes. I went, oh, well volunteered there,
Yeah,
Sally.
but the thing is, if it's me and Debbie, it's either going to be Debbie or it's going to be me. So I thought I might as well do it. But no, it's good. It's good. We should
That
give
was
other people a
excellent.
chance to talk as well.
Well done, Sashi. And as you said something very important there, which was that, that not every technique is going to work for every person, but it's about finding that combination of techniques that work for you and then being persistent with them and being committed with it. Yeah, Very good. Excellent. And last but not least, room 3, Carolyn, Dorothy, Margaret and Ruth. How did you get on?
I'll get quickly through it.
Go for it, Ruth.
We kind of talked about being pushed out of our comfort zone, mainly around exercise, and
yes.
how that gave us anxiety and problems with the TSD. And then we mentioned Tough Mudder.
Oh, yes.
All of that, yeah.
Yes.
And then we just said actually just talking to each other in the kind of inner circle and just realizing other people are going through the same really helps. I mentioned tapping techniques that I use.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. And as you said, particularly the, going down into our sensations and finding what works for you. Another technique you can use is if you find a pebble, something that's smooth, preferably that it's round and smooth, and you can keep it in your pocket, and if you rub it in circles, it's really useful, particularly like it works well for young people if you have somebody who's young and stressed. But there definitely seems to be something soothing about that. And again, going back to that sensation Ruth was talking about there, like going back to our senses, because that's when we're picking up that information. It's a great way of being able to soothe ourselves. So yeah, excellent. Really good suggestions there. Well done, room 3. Fantastic discussion. Well done, everybody. That was another great mastermind. Fair play to you all. And well done again. You're all working really hard, and great to see so much support as well, because it's a tough topic, and it's a topic that relates, we all relate to it, and it's great to see so much social support as well, that you're all encouraging each other, and it's excellent. So listen, I hope you all have a lovely fortnight, and I'll see you all again in 2 weeks' time.
See you all later. Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye,
A lovely
everybody.
time. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.